There's a generation of people that use smartphones differently. There are a generation of people who have millions of texts and images of them in environments with partners, internet partners or not, whatever, that now are going to enter into public life, where this will hang like a sort of Damocles.
Yep.
Do you think that it's the kind of thing we will evolve over, or will it be used as essentially this kind of like gendered means of shaming women?
Well, that was my biggest concern coming out of this, is that, you know, the pictures that were used against me were not even ones that I knew were taken. They weren't even selfies that I took and sent to somebody else, right? They were ones that I didn't even know existed. And you can tell that from looking at the images. But I have taken images like that, right? And I'm not even ashamed to say that I've taken images and sent images like that. And so have, I think the numbers show, regardless of your age, I think over 80% of people have done that. So let's not pretend that this is some taboo thing that people aren't doing. But what we do need to say is that who is it being used against? And it's overwhelmingly women. This is this whole concept of cyber exploitation and revenge porn. But mine is the first real example where it's been used against a public figure, especially a political figure, and then the images are published by a mainstream publication, by a significant publication. And that's the reason that I think the legal action that we're pursuing is going to be so important, because I don't think that this is an acceptable precedent that can be set. I'm all for the First Amendment. That is something that I don't think that we can question in any way, shape, or form. But there is a line, and it comes down to fundamental human decency. And are you enabling or empowering somebody who is literally using this to abuse you and to take you down, and putting that out for the world to see, and in the most vulnerable state that you could possibly be in? That in and of itself is going to discourage people from running if we don't do something to stop it. And so we are pursuing everything that we can against Red State and against the Daily Mail, and that's going to be a fight.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.